Okay, I have been trying to write Go for a while now, and I run into this issue where I'm trying to use principles that I've learned in from Java, Python, you name it, really, where you're building these objects or structures and you're expecting inheritance to just work. And Go's guidance is to use embedded structs. So what I did is initially I was like, okay, great. Um, I'm gonna um, I'm gonna um, I'm gonna create this base struct, right? And then Go tells you, okay, what you can do is to model inheritances, you create another one. Let's say this, and let's say I call this like A, I guess. Like just let's use classes, right? Okay, let's maybe use the example that I was using just to make it a little clearer. So as I'm creating a task system, so this was my base task. I'm just gonna call this base. And then I had a file download task, for example. Download task. So Go's recommendation is to actually take this and put it inside here, right? Now, this is great, but you end up with, let's see, you end up with this, duplicate this, and let's say you have compress file task, for example. Compress file task, and maybe let's say here is like bundle file. So you end up with all these different structures, which is great. This so far looks good. Now, if I had if I started writing some code here, right, let me see if I can get some coding. And they don't have any coding fonts. That's unfortunate. It's okay. I'll just use. Let's do this one. Looks kind of fun. Okay, let's say now I wanted to create some methods, right? So I'm creating a method, let's say called save. And I'm like, okay, so save is just going to take a task, a base task. Let me keep it capital T, a base task. Right? Now this is not going to work. And the reason is Go is just going to say, okay, save of file download task. You're never going to really save a base task. If anything, base task sounds just as a way to pass the common props. So what I would do, this didn't work. So what you need to do is use interfaces to, again, this is all very much the Go way of doing things and the recommendation in the community. I'm gonna explore something different that I think is pretty cool. So you have this, you pass the save download task, it's not gonna work. So what you do is you model it with interfaces. So you say, okay, I can accept to save anything that implements the task interface. And let's say you go ahead here and you define your type task interface. You say interface. This is anything that has the method called get task ID. Turn the string. Okay, then you're set. Then you can save it. So anything that has that, and by default, because maybe you put this in the base task, everything will have it. So you kind of will be set at that point, and you'll be able to actually successfully save it. Now, saving is fine. And by the way, my store is DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL data store. So there's really no schema. I mean, other than the primary ID, you can really save anything in there as long as it's kind of JSON. It really just can be saved. So let's look at the get example, and this is where it starts to get interesting. Let's say I want to get something by task ID, which is a string. So So you pass this, and then you start to think, what is my return type? Task. Interesting. So if it's a return type of task, that means I can invoke the getTaskID, but then inside my method, what shall I write? And I'm using this library to fetch the data. So let's just copy that one line, right? Let's just copy that one line. So let's say we do task ID, and then we take this task ID, and we'll do like all that one magic. And now we need to pass a struct. So what do? Do you pass base task? You could, but now you lose all the metadata that's applied on file download. So I decided to take a different approach. And just like, let's look at what it looks like to have what inheritance looks like in languages like JavaScript, which is not a great language for inheritance, but the same principles apply in Java, so it's the same concept. Let's say I had a base task, same thing, base task. It has some objects, some methods, or let's say it just had an ID, task ID. Let's just stay with the same nomenclature, and let's say I'm writing TypeScript. Whatever, you get the point. And now if I go to represent this class file download, which extends the base task, now what is this really? Right? And let's say this had file name. Now, really, what this is a class that just looks like this. If I were to write this from scratch, it's just a class that looks like this. It has a task ID, and it has a string, and a file name. This is exactly what this is. So I started thinking, what if I do this? Because this is my end goal. I want to end up with this. Are you seeing what I'm about to show you? What if I do this in Go? So now let's go to Go. So in Go, I can do this. I can say task. Okay, I'm gonna have a task. I'm gonna define all my common things here. Let's give it another space. All my commons. I'm gonna do task ID. Let's say capital task ID. And I'm gonna say this string. And then I can add all my extensions using embedded structs. And let's say now I can say my file download. I'm gonna embed a file download struct. And I go and define my file download. Type file download. There's a struct, and let's say this defines the file name, which is a string. And now basically this is what I ended up with. Something that looks kind of like this. Kind of. It's through an embedded struct, so you'll have to access it through file download, or the data is just going to get added. And the only thing you need to be careful of is that you need to make sure there are no name collisions, which for me is going to be pretty easy. Because I can just prefix everything correctly. So that's fine. That's great. And now let's look at the benefits. Let's go back to our, let's go back here. Let's see how this solves this problem. Now for saving, it was never really a problem, but now it's even easier. I can just say, take the task and save it. Great, no problem. Because everything in my program is a task. Awesome. But now let's look at the get. Same thing. I don't need to do this. I can just do and task, which is the same thing I was doing, except it wasn't working. But now it will work. So that's kind of my approach that I'm solving, and I'm refactoring everything that was written like this in these big boxes, and now they are being written in into to follow kind of this model. So that's what I'll be exploring in the rest of this stream. I'm going to be moving this guy to the right, and we will be trying to write a new. As you can see, I have tons of red stuff here. Not great. Okay, let's dive in. Let's continue this. So we're basically creating a task here. So it's going to return task. Beautiful. And this is creating the master download, the main downloader. And now let's create another one, CNX file download, which will take in this case a master download. Just going to call it MD, and this will return a task. Same concept. Now let's go back to our old code that created this offer download, and let's just copy it back in here. I might have accidentally nested this. Let me pass in an index, which is an int. Okay, and there's tons of stuff that will likely not work, so let's just work through it. Let me refactor this a little bit. Okay, so there are a couple of things that are kind of hidden. I'm gonna attach all the offer files, but I'm gonna keep it as lowercase. Offer files, which is a string. I don't really know why Go did this, where they put the array symbol first. It's just super confusing. This actually is completely omitted. So now we can do MD. We can actually change this to just accept the offer files. I guess you could just say download. Yeah, maybe just offer files for now, or download files. Yeah, I think offer files is probably a cleaner approach. And then you give it the offer files. And then here, we're just going to say the length of this guy. Of offer files. And we're actually going to attach the offer files. This is a strings. So let's see now. Now we can go to not markdown. Let's do download offer files, and I'll access the index of that. Need to import the regex. That's okay. So we're gonna go to offer download.go. So these types I've defined at the top. I'm going to define some variables here. Okay, now this is where it starts to get interesting. And I honestly will suggest that we either import from the provider to input some data about the provider. By the way, I did something very, very similar here, but we're flattening it out. Instead of adding embedded structs, we're just embedding the concept. So this is a Connexity provider, so we're just embedding the API key and the data here. So yeah, we'll be set. I will actually be right back. I need to rush to the bathroom really quick. Alrighty. So the main thing to think about though is if you ever have that problem of you have to model like different types of tasks, different types of cars, that type of like common problem that you have from that you have from different languages, and it's just a common object oriented problem. This is really how you do it in Go. So just keep that in mind. Okay, as far as for getting the URL, so it is interesting. This part is interesting because I think that generating the URL kind of might live outside the task. And we'll also remove this for now. So in comparison to, again, this is the stuff that's gone. So now you can do file download is a file download. I don't know if there's a shorthand syntax for this. Like, can you just do file download like this and it would just know? No, you can't. So this is also something that is a little hacky. So similar to here, these are props, right? So yeah, after no need to do task not because we're already here. can do md.tid. Yeah, so yeah, in this case, you accept a master download that's just a task. Oh, yes, so this is the other one, right? Like, same thing here. Your trigger is not really a task. It is simply an extension. So it could just be a trigger. Sorry, not nest yourself, so a trigger. Oh, interesting. I didn't know you can't nest yourself. That's interesting. So how do you define trees and these types of structures? Interesting, interesting. So that obviously makes things slightly more interesting because now you don't pass a trigger, you pass a trigger, but that is a task. It's a trigger task basically. So now you should be set. Okay. Yeah, so this is no longer going to be applicable. Props is not really used, so we're going to do that. We're going to take the gonna rename this to master download. Gonna take the master download and create a new subtask from the props. Now, what I'm trying to think of here is, I think now I had this logic where I was like, really the new method of the task should be the only one that is allowed to create the ID. But now I feel like if you pass me one, I'll just use that. And we can have checks around, you know, whether props. We can do that here too, just so it's a little bit easier to reference. We can do if low.if. Let's do props dot tid. If it's equal to this, then we're gonna do that. Else, we're gonna do props.tid. So this helps simplify some stuff. And the only reason I did this is because now I feel like instead of doing that, you can do ID here directly. It's kind of beautiful. Like, you know, you say a task and I want, like, I'm actually digging this right now. Like, I don't hate it. I used to hate some of the stuff where I felt like it was a little hacky. I also should call out that I did not test this with my Dynamo library. Based on their documentation, it should work. Like, it should not. If it does throw any errors or panics or anything, I really think it likely like should just be. Yeah, if it panics, then I just I would fix the bug. Like I would fork the library, I would do something, but it should work. All right, so the final thing that's remaining is this get URL thing. So getting the URL is dependent on the provider in a way. I can't generate the URL. We obviously know this is a Connexity file download, so it's easy to create a method to get the URL here. However, that sort of feels like it's not the task's job, or although it might be, because yeah, it might be. It might be because the master download basically. Okay, and then how do you get the how do you build the federated URL? Do you let the task handle that that sourcing of the URLs? To me, it just sounds like it's something that should just come from the provider directly, not the planner. They're just the provider. Um, so I have a feeling that this should just come from here, and this should just accept the provider prop. Um, so that's really what I'm going to work on is this logic here. So I'm going to do func, not calcu right now. I'm just going to do. Oh, also I did want to change this to be a composite ID. Let me go there because I think there's something else that I wanted to do. We do utils. Seems a little ugly. Can do that, but yeah, let's just do that. Okay. No need to just let's do it. Utils dot compose ID, and it's gonna take the base ID, and then it's gonna take the type. It's Connexity. Okay, cool. Let's do func. So this is not mutable, like it's not doing, so that's just a provider. And we're just gonna do get URL. Yeah, this I think it makes sense to live there. Like it's just part of it. And it kind of like leads to a little bit of cleaner stuff. Like if anybody needs anything from Connexity, they just go talk to Connexity. Is my mental model. So we're gonna do P here instead of that, and that. Okay, cool. And then now we can do accept the provider as well. I'm actually gonna make this. Ooh, I wonder if the provider should come from the master download. That's a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. So P is a provider. Provider.provider. Let's see if it can import it. And we're just going to add here the provider. So we're not embedding, we're kind of embedding the struct, but not really. We're actually creating a prop for it. So let's do that. Provider is P. Cool. Just separating the publics versus the privates. And then now let's do master download the provider.get URL. Nice. We are green, finally. Finally. So now I have all these tests that I can move or will move. I'm gonna do that in a separate task. I'm gonna just delete I'll delete all of them right now. Gonna delete all this stuff. And yeah, I think I'm gonna also just delete this. And then I'm actually gonna move the planner into the planning module, which is where it should be. Okay, and we have this planner base. I really don't know if this is needed. Kind of makes sense, but if anything, I will just move this into as part of the main package here. And I will delete this. And then we still have 3 problems here. Let's see what they are. So somebody doesn't like the task. Why? Illegal cycle and declaration of task. Where's the go? Where is the legal declaration? Where is that? Why is... It might be because there's still some embedding happening somewhere. Let's see. Nope. And we got rid of that. So let's see. Line 29. Invalid declaration cycle, line 29. Okay, let's see. Is it because of the everything I've set up the stream for? What? Oh, yes, sir. So this is not a task, it's a trigger. There we go. There we go. Okay. Unknown field ID. Where is that? Where am I doing that? I think you. Oh, yep. So this is a TID, not an ID. So now my code is looking a lot cleaner. I really think so. I think we're at the point here where this is super clean. Like all the downloads are in like one file, and it just kind of logically makes sense. And our repository is super easy to work with. We're going to be able to get by task ID if we want just a single one. We're going to be able to create the batch, which accepts a list of these. It's really going to be super simple. So I'm really excited here. Yeah, so that's basically it. There's some refactoring that might need to happen here. It doesn't seem like it unless it like needs to be open. Yep, and I was sure that that would happen. Let me do those as well, just to get it out of the way. So this is the Connexity planner. So let's keep this calling this package Connexity, which is fine. So no leaky abstractions anymore. So we have this plan. Let's see, why is it complaining? Oh, it's not complaining anymore. It should complain though. It should complain. It's okay. It should complain. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna say task dot new master download, and we're gonna pass the trigger task. So okay, so now these are actually incorrect. So they're all tasks. We're just gonna label them differently. So it's all just task.task. Task.task. That is something that's like could be a little bit cleaner. Task.task. I don't really know if we need all this, but anyways, just keeping them here. Should have just embed your provider, honestly. Like at this point, don't really need this. Yep. Provider, which is going to equal to P. Sure, you can make this capital. I'm not going to complain. Oh, do that. We could embed it. And then the Connexity just becomes a provider. I guess it wouldn't really hurt. I think it wouldn't really hurt. fuck with it anyway. Okay, so where is this coming from? Let's refactor this into new CNX. And that's good. Let's refactor this into good CNX euro. So we're just going full on JSON logger. Structured logger is gonna be a vibe for sure. So I think it's gonna pay dividends in the long run. Do the following. We'll do utils dot debug message master been created. Provider is Connexity. Let's do this. Offer files have been extracted. I think we should not print. Yeah. So should be good here. Yeah, I think this is a full-on refactor. we're basically set here. So I'm gonna pause this. I'm gonna end this stream right here, and I'll